I
Fuck you.
oh I hello everybody. Welcome to Side-ology.
I'm Amy.
I'm so sad and confused. And also I'm tech
I'm
real.
sad and confused. I'm dead.
I really teed myself up for that one.
You really did.
I can't express enough that rendition of Remus's song very much sounded like a little duck. And now I can't stop imagining like a little baby duck just playing it on like a what are you? Tuba? What's the... No, it's not tuba.
Trombone.
Trombone. There we go.
He was moving, for those on Spotify, he was moving his hand like a trombone, and I was like,
I couldn't figure out which one that was. There's too many brass instruments.
It's okay. I got you. If you ever need help with that, I've done that before. Quite a few times, in fact. But anyway,
Man.
Hi, folks.
Hi. Welcome to Chaos.
Well, yeah.
Didn't we start episode 1 by saying that exact phrase? I almost wonder.
Probably.
We said something similar, I think, or episode 2 maybe. I remember saying something like "Welcome to Chaos" previous, and today that's even more true. We're talking about Remus. Oh my god.
You just don't trust past Amy, so I don't know.
I don't trust past Amy.
Yeah, don't trust the past. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I barely trust
Anyway.
future Amy.
Oh, I don't trust anybody anyway.
You started this episode by saying "fuck you" and me. What trust is there to have?
There's none.
Yeah.
So, hey y'all. We are diving into...
Remus.
And to be clear, once again, we are not professionals. We are taking information from our experiences, previous therapy sessions, previous psychology classes that I've had. And in this case, we're also taking the research that Thomas used for certain episodes of Sandersides from the internet, stuff like that. So just know that if you think we're professionals,
That's your problem.
That's your problem.
We do a lot to prove that we're not.
Don't take what we say with a grain of salt, because you don't trust us.
More than a grain. I think like a bucket, maybe.
A bucket of salt.
I think at the very least exactly 1 Mr. Salt worth of salt.
Oh, there you go.
That's quite a few grains.
That's quite a few grains, yeah.
Yeah. And see, now I'm thinking Mr. Salt as Remus. Now we're at a whole different topic.
That's an interesting experience.
It's an interesting experience.
That's an interesting perspective.
Okay, Logan.
I mean, the amount of... anyway, I have... All right.
Oh, I guess we'll never know.
Honestly, you know what it is? It's me trying to work the purple ball from my cosplay into this conversation somehow. And it's not working. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe hold that. And it didn't hold. And now we're here. So...
Oh, no. I'm so sorry. For your loss.
For context, for those who haven't seen my cosplays of Remus, my Remus has one of those like stretchy purple ball things that's
like the little like hairy doodads. They're not hair, but like
they're like
little stringy bits.
I don't know.
It's like if hair was rubber and on a ball.
Yeah. I was just trying to work that in somehow, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, I think there's been no reason to have the purple ball, but now that I think about it, there's no way to describe it without being gross. So honestly, that kind of makes the purple ball relevant to Remus.
A hairy purple ball does sound like something that can be misconstrued a couple ways. A hairy purple sticky ball?
Yeah.
Welcome to Remus.
Yeah, welcome to Remus. Yeah, that's the face that that gross face that you have on right now, the one that you're, especially you listeners, that you're just going, ew, what the fuck? That's the face that you need to hold the entire episode.
Especially you, Jonathan.
Ew.
Anyways, if there's a Jonathan listening, they just got spooked.
Jonathan just got spooked.
Jonathan Jacobo. Sorry, that's a Scooby-Doo reference. That's random. Anyways.
So, what does Remus represent?
Well, Remus, in fact, represents a portion of Thomas's creativity. Yeah, you're not the only one, Roman. Buster Brown. Anyway.
You mean there's 2 creativities?
Oh my god, what did creativity do? Split?
It's almost like it's split or something, yeah.
It's almost like that's exact terminology that we'll probably be getting into at some point.
Oh.
Whoa. But, Remus is in fact the... Excuse me, Chair, do you want to chime in? Remus is in fact...
Remus is the chair confirmed.
Sorry, I'm getting real tired of this chair in recent episodes. I know I've brought it up here and there. I brought it up in a recent TikTok I just made. I'm getting real sick of this chair shit. This chair is now going to be called Remus because it's always got something to say at the worst times.
Nice.
That's official canon Tetra lore now.
Honorary. I'm glad that that's honorary with our podcast.
Yeah.
So
Chair the Duke.
They split, you say?
Yes, Roman is in fact, to put it as Sandersides did put it, I believe Logan put it specifically this way. Roman is sort of like Netflix Kids and Family. He's the option if you want to block out all the juicy stuff.
Juicy stuff. Logan didn't say the last part.
He did not.
And if you're sitting here wondering, why are we going through, like, the obvious that, we're talking about Remus, why are we talking about how he's the dark creativity? I think this one specifically is very important to focus on what Remus represents, because I know in the fandom there's been some debate as to the relevance of, or like whether Remus actually encompasses intrusive thoughts or if that's a whole different thing. So we're defining what we perceive Remus to represent, because it's a little dicey.
It is a little dicey, and I think we'll get a little bit more into that in the next few minutes. But there are definitely some people who, in regards to certain aspects of Remus, question the validity and question Thomas's intentions, I almost want to say.
Right.
It's a funky
and we don't want
little
to downplay
thing.
that.
Yeah. We want to try to explain exactly what Remus is, and I think, speaking for both of us, like why we think it actually is accurate and not egregious.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to downplay anybody's perspective, but I'm basically just taking what I've seen from Sandersides, and we're like really placing the definition into as much of a light as we can, and also recognizing that I don't know where exactly I heard this, but I know Joan was a big part of creating Remus, and Joan has experienced intrusive thoughts themselves. So that's a very, because it's from the mind of someone who has experienced that, I take it more valid than I would in other cases.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I think it's also important to remember that Remus is not solely intrusive thoughts. He is also dark creativity, so I feel like there is some leeway to be had about like how accurate representation he is, like moment to moment. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
But so as we were saying, Remus is basically dark creativity, the darker side of creative thoughts, where Roman is a bit safer options and safer, more clean content. Remus is juicy stuff. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
You can talk now. It's your turn because I need to stop after that one.
Actually, watching back through this episode and the episodes with Remus, I'm recognizing that the fact that Roman and Remus are separate in that way is because of how. Logan said this, but it kind of made sense this time. The fact that, oh my God, my brain stopped. Hold on.
You got this.
I got this.
Believe me.
At a young age, you filed away products of your imagination as either welcome or forbidden. And because those thoughts were deemed as negative from a young age, there was a really intentional split that happened, like even just in reality away from Sandersides. Like if you consistently are looking at creativity as a purely good force, you're going to have things that come up that are a little darker that you're like, I don't really want to think about that, which become that darker creativity and that stuff that you really don't want to touch or mess with, but it still happens in your head and in your brain.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to avoid, even if it's not something that you personally agree with or desire to go into, which I know is what Thomas deals with a lot with Remus. as we will especially get to later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have more mature ideas in your content, so like the mature stuff that he wasn't privy to including in his content before is more Remus, because Roman would have put the things that he wanted to put in his content. So yeah, I think the line is changing. That's an interesting thing that we'll talk about, because I know we're going to talk about evolution of Sandersides at one point. But it's interesting to think about how like Roman curses now.
It is interesting. I mean, I think Thomas and the sides, just in general, I mean, obviously outside of Patton, but like there is a lot more cursing.
So that tide is turning a little bit.
The question is like, is there a bit more of like a leniency to, you know, quote unquote darker creativity? And what does that mean, especially for Remus?
Mm-hmm. So I have pulled information from the articles that are linked below dealing with intrusive thoughts specifically, so that I can kind of, again, really be specific about what intrusive thoughts are and what Remus represents as a whole. Something I found in that article, one of the first people, I believe it was one of the first people to even give an idea of intrusive thoughts as a concept, was Herman Melville. He was an author from 1852, before psychology was even a movement. And which is, I mean, that's actually true. Psychology became a movement like in the 1900s. Like it's still very
so recent
of a concept. Oh yeah, it's very recent of a concept to even remotely consider. It's crazy.
Fascinating.
It's crazy. So yeah, but the quote is, "One trembles to think of that mysterious thing in the soul which, in spite of the individual's own innocent self, will still dream horrid dreams and mutter unmentionable thoughts." So that darker, that a lot of the things that people hide away from day-to-day conversation are just like, I just ignore that. Mm-hmm. That's those unmentionable thoughts. That's Remus. So I also have, and that's from Psychology Today, an article about forbidden thinking. So I have a bigger paragraph here as well that I think probably directly co-aligned with what Thomas looked at. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a bigger paragraph, but I'm going to read it all. Unwanted intrusive thoughts are stuck thoughts that cause great distress. They seem to come from out of nowhere, arrive with a whoosh, and cause a great deal of anxiety. The content of unwanted intrusive thoughts often focuses on sexual or violent or socially unacceptable images, which, I mean, everything that Remus represented was basically that. Yeah. People who experience unwanted intrusive thoughts are afraid that they might commit the acts they picture in their mind. They also fear that the thoughts mean something terrible about them, which plays into the mindset of Thomas feeling like an absolute bad person. And that's where Patton and Virgil kind of came in, and I can see where the inspiration for the episode came from after I read that.
Oh, yeah, because it's that concern of that, like, it's in your head. It, like, you thought it. So it's like,
that's what Virgil
it's
says.
That thought of like, this must be an intentional thought, because what is a thought if not intentional?
Yeah.
So it's strange.
So I also, the other thing that I was kind of having trouble finding was the fact that these intrusive thoughts, because like, there could be a abnormal aspect to intrusive thoughts. I don't know if that's what they're tackling in this episode, which is probably where people are getting enraged. But like, or having the debate about whether Remus is actually representative of intrusive thoughts or not. But that's kind of where we're going to settle, that type of just unwanted thoughts that are kind of darker and not really socially acceptable to mention. But also the fact, I was having trouble connecting that to creativity, and I was like, how did they get to creativity? And so actually to verbally mention, that other quote was from the I was like, what is it? Hold on, I need to pull it up. Association of, or Anxiety and Depression Association of America. And then this one's also Psychology Today. For as long as humankind has celebrated the creative powers of the mind, we've been forced to confront the darker side of the imagination. And so that phrase made me go, ha, that's where they got the creativity piece. I was wondering where that piece came from. And I mean, yeah, I thought that was cool.
So I guess it's almost just as valid, you know, in calling them creativity, it's almost just as valid just to call them the imagination. Because I mean that's basically like, I feel like that's not a stretch to say that like, oh yeah, they're the imagination, because like, I mean that really is like, I mean they're creativity and imagination are almost one and the same in, a certain light. I mean, maybe.
And I think it's uncontrollable.
Oh, yeah.
I think imagination to an extent can be uncontrollable. So I also really love how Logan directly calls out, like it or not, the Duke does encompass a portion of your imagination.
Yeah, you can't control what you think all the time. You can control what you think on purpose, but sometimes things are going to slip through. Because it's hard to, like, for the same, what was it, the test, the goldfish in a condom? That's the one.
The white bear
White
experiment?
bear, there we go. I was like, I know it's not that, but I was like, there's something, it was just that scene. But it's that same thing. It's like, once you see something that, like, or hear something that stimulates your brain in that way, it can be hard to drop.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard not to think about something, especially when you're trying not to think about it. So,
right. And I know that, I also know that it's later at night, so he's sleep deprived. And I know from personal experience, I have had the moments where you wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare and you're still thinking about it and it still scares you. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that if I wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, I have to be up for a while and let it settle, or I'm going to get right back into that nightmare.
That episode was the middle of the night? I thought it was the next morning. I thought he couldn't. I thought his sleep was interrupted that night, and that's why he didn't sleep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Either way, he's sleep deprived.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's hard to control your brain even when you're in perfect, health, let alone when you're exhausted. Mm-hmm. Basically, or otherwise like occupied.
But like I've definitely had that type of thing happen before to me, so this is also very familiar. I was like, oh. I've been there.
But yeah.
Fun.
No, yeah, so hopefully this shined a light on, like, our definition here of intrusive thoughts and what intrusive thoughts basically are. Like we said, I know there's a lot of people who disagree with his, interpretation of them through Remus. I know I've seen a lot of cases where it's that people are saying it's because they're not affecting character Thomas as hard, or, they're not as dark as certain other people's, intrusive thoughts, which is, it's sort of like gatekeeping, like, the level of where it needs to be, as opposed to the fact that, like, intrusive thoughts don't need to be something that's, like, entirely debilitating, but it can just be something that is, it's something that causes anxiety, like, a great deal of anxiety, of course, but, like, that's going to be subjective based on the person.
It's like a spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. Possibly. I feel like it's hard to, like, quantify what makes somebody else anxious and what, someone else will consider as intrusive for them.
I would honestly encourage, if you're curious about it and you do talk to some kind of therapist or like psychology teachers in your life, I would encourage you to go talk to them about that, because, like, it'd be interesting to hear their perspectives to figure out, like, if there is a line there, or if that's still research that's up in the air. Because there's a lot of things in psychology that, like, honestly don't have evidence. Like, I know something that's at the beginning of this episode, which connects nicely, is trigger warnings. Mm-hmm. Trigger warnings haven't been studied a lot. There's not actual evidence that trigger warnings work or are helpful in the long run. Oh yeah, there's a lot of people who love them, but there's also a lot of evidence for the other arguing side that they don't work and they coddle.
Oh no, coddle me, please. I need it.
Oh yeah, but like,
give me safety blanket and cookies. I can't do it.
Sure, I want to give trigger warnings where I can, but at the same time, like, it was really interesting to see that, like, genuine research hasn't been had about trigger warnings to the level that we can definitively say they work or they don't. So, like, in the same way with intrusive thoughts, it may not have been researched enough. That might be part of the reason why there's still a debate.
Yeah, see, I obviously this isn't the topic at hand necessarily, but I will say, just, for a defense of trigger warnings, or at least my thing of trigger warnings, I don't even know if it works in terms of, like, seeing the trigger warning and then watching the media. For me, it's just a warning of what to watch and not watch.
Right.
Because I know, I use a site called Does the Dog Die? To filter out what I watch now, because that I can check to see if there's bone breaking in movies. That's one of my triggers, and it's so helpful, because then, like, as much as it's annoying to, like, see something and be like, oh, now I can't watch that movie, I'd rather know than not know. And I think it is also helpful to know, like, even if you want to dare to watch it, at least then you know what to expect. There's a part of me that's like, I wish every movie that came out had trigger warnings somewhere. Like, it doesn't have to be on the movie, but I would like there to be an accessible database officially by the movie that, like, lets you know the types of things to worry about and, like, where they happen, approximately.
Just for the informative, though, like, literally the other side is, like, if you're consistently warned about it, you're not facing it to then move past it.
That's fair, so, like, but that's also assuming anyone wants to face it.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. The big argument on the positive side of trigger warnings is like, it should be your choice.
Yeah.
It should be your choice. And I mean, I agree with that. But like, it was just interesting to see both sides. Mm-hmm. But genuinely, that may be part of the reason why people are debating and arguing about it is because like, we just don't know enough.
Yeah. And I think in general, especially like, again, with mental health or with anything that like people experience that's on that sort of like spectrum of like intensity, it's, you know, it's easy to chalk something up to, like, this is how this is supposed to be because this is how I deal with it, as opposed to realizing that other people deal with it in different variations, in different ways. Like, to the point where I've seen people, rather, who were not even just with Remus at that point, but just judging Thomas's tweets about his own, like, what he called intrusive thoughts in certain posts.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not okay. I mean, you can't judge what makes somebody else feel that way, or what somebody else... Because again, whether or not it sounds like an intrusive thought to you, you don't know how anxious that actually made him. So.
And the thing is, like, yeah, comparing experiences is poison.
It is.
I think, because it's just, especially in, like, the harder situation, like, whatever situation is, like, the most painful in your life, if you compare that to somebody else's, it immediately, like, and you think that that person had it worse than you or something, that is immediately devaluing the experience that you have.
Yeah.
That's painful. So, like, be respectful of your experiences as well as other people's, no matter what happened to them, because shit's painful.
You never know what's going on in someone else's mind. I think I accidentally just quoted Inside Out.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Well, cancel the podcast. That's it. We're done.
I can't live with myself after that one.
No, come on. Well... It's okay. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. This is... Okay. Yeah, good. Excellent. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
But, so I think the big thing that I want to say before we jump into other things is with Remus, looking at him as like a playable character, somebody that you're trying to portray, because it's interesting. Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to mention that I haven't played Remus as much as I've played the other sides. Yeah. I've played, because I do a lot of acting, I've said that before, but like, I do a lot of improv acting, and I do the improv acting with all of the sides except for Remus. And the main reason I don't do Remus is because I'll get demonetized and kicked off live streams and things because of the way that I do improv. Oh. However, the other reason is I don't think I fully understand where he's coming from a lot of the time.
I mean, that's fair. We don't have a lot of, like, screen time with him, so it's harder than other sides to figure out what's going on.
And I mean, whether we're right or not, I mean, obviously I can make something up, because I've pretty much made stuff up with Janice a little bit, but, like, in the sense of Remus, there's just not a lot of evidence of him being, like, honest.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, other than just like him coming out about his name, but even then, who knows?
I will say, though, that the pin that we put in the other episode, we're bringing that back. The fact that, it was your comment. If you want to talk about that, go ahead.
That Remus was born from repression, which, I mean, makes sense because the whole reason why Remus exists was because there were these certain thoughts that Thomas had, deemed unacceptable. I think, like we said with Logan said something to that effect, that, certain thoughts and creative, notions that were darker and unsavory, and especially due to his Christian upbringing, that seemed like he needed to put away. And he needed to push down. He's like, these are not thoughts I can be having. These are bad boy thoughts. And that's the reason that, creativity had split and Remus exists. So, as much as, as we're going to get into, dealing with intrusive thoughts does refer to a lot of talk of repression, Remus himself was born out of repression.
Yes, it is. Which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. He was literally born from Thomas being like, "Get out of here, you." That was his whole origin story.
Pulling Roman and Remus apart, literally. Yeah,
it's like just like taking creativity and be like, "No, this part just rip."
So, to add to that, I think it's interesting to if you're playing Remus or you're looking from the lens of Remus in that way, you've been pushed aside all your life.
Mm-hmm. You've been since the moment you started existing.
You've been ignored. You've been pushed. I mean, Logan and Remus have a lot in common. That way, they just are really, really ignored. And I also think it's interesting because this is kind of the part that I can't really solve in my head. I almost want to take it a direction, but I won't. But like the idea that Remus consistently uses biblical language because it was born out of that Christian upbringing kind of thing. He was born out of that. So I almost wonder, I'm not going to take it too far because I recognize some people don't have the Christian background, but I'm thinking like if Thomas doesn't fully agree with the Christian traditions, maybe Remus is also the parts of religion that he doesn't agree with. Because I know in the Christian faith, it's in most, I gotta be careful how I say this. In different branches of Christianity, there's different levels of like what you believe and how you believe and whatever. But like in Catholicism specifically, which is I think what Thomas comes from, it's very like specific. And if you don't believe specific things, you're kind of a doubter, which means you're not fully present in the religion. And because of that, I feel like any thought that is outside of that very set Catholicism like mindset is Remus. So he's kind of pulling he's pulling him out of the religion a little bit, I wonder.
I mean, that's interesting. Because as much of it's a good point, because as much of the biblical talk as he'll use, it would make a lot of sense that Remus, the thoughts that do not align with those ideals would, he would represent sort of the rebellion from that upbringing and, that whole, community and notion.
As somebody who came from a Christian background, like I came from a really like chill Christian background. They were pretty chill about like interpretation of scripture and things like that. But I know if it wasn't chill, I think it's feared to ask those questions that are testing and questioning religion. So like that type of thing also sounds like Remus, which probably explains why Thomas is really afraid of Remus and really afraid of breaking that structure that he has for himself. So that's probably why Patton was really on Remus's tail, like, whoa.
That makes sense, because Patton's such like the good following boy. Interesting.
You don't think about that. Because like, think about it. Some places are really particular about like clothing. Like, the shoulders, don't show the shoulders, that kind of jokey thing. But at the same time, some people are like that. So like the fact that Remus is willing to be, kinky and, skanky with his clothing is like, we don't even think about that. We don't even process that. You don't even learn or educate yourself about that. So you just shove it away as bad. So it becomes part of that negative thinking. And Remus probably encompasses that.
Interesting. I do like that the character with the most biblical talk is the one that is the least biblical. I do enjoy
I think that's fascinating. I think that's really, really fascinating.
It makes sense too, because I mean, like, he compares himself and Roman to Cain and Abel. And I mean, Abel wasn't no good follower boy.
I'm
an idiot. Cain's the one oh god. I just ruined my whole love of Supernatural and Lucifer in one fell swoop.
It's okay. Cain is from The Amazing Digital Circus. You've got that confused.
Oh my god, really? Wow. We've jumped fandoms And I in thoughts.
I know. There's no. No, honestly, another thing that I wanted to point out and mention is how there's such a blurry line between Remus and Virgil.
There really is. Because, like, there's a thought that I had pre-podcast. I don't think I told you it, but I will bring it up now. Well, will I? Maybe. I guess I can bring this part up now. Yeah, sure, why not? So, I find it interesting because Remus is definitely one that has been repressed for so long and does not want to be ignored. Like, we've seen in his appearances so far, he does not like being pushed aside, ignored, and therefore he continuously pushes it and gets louder and louder to sort of get his thoughts and his point across. And there's a part of me that thinks of that, and it reminds me a lot of early Virgil. Because that's Virgil's whole motivation at the beginning, was that he had this feeling that nobody was going to listen to him unless he got loud, unless he got scary. So
honestly,
yeah.
Okay, argument moment.
Ooh.
Or maybe isn't that kind of what all the sides are trying to do? They're just fighting to be heard.
They are. No, they're definitely fighting to be heard. Not definitely all in the same ways as that. Because they don't have those same tactics usually. Like, in terms of, like, the necessarily being loud to be heard. I mean, I guess maybe some of that can be applied to Roman, just because of that ego. But
yeah, I think some sides are going to be listened to more than others. I think.
Interesting if that was the reason why Logan's falsehood is so loud. Is because he just wants to be heard. Damn.
Wow. You're reaching lore here, my guy. Oh my god.
That's funny.
That's crazy lore right there. What? Anyway.
But yeah, so the point of that was that, there is, I think, some mutualness between, like, Virgil and Remus in that way.
And I almost wonder, that's probably why Virgil's so scared of him.
I mean, fair. Plus the fact that, like, what was it, at the end of his first episode, Remus was talking about, like, you know, old times with Virgil. Everyone's got this backstory with Virgil, man. All these dark sides got this backstory with Virgil, like, back in the days.
Back in the good old days.
Back in the good old dark days.
Good old dark days. I'm trying to form words, and then my brain's being an ADHD brain.
Wow. If there hasn't ever been a sentence that has just summed up my life before.
I was gonna say, no, I don't know. I'm trying not to be repetitive, but I think I was just gonna, like, go back into the fact that, like, Virgil now fears him so bad because he doesn't want to be a bad person, kind of taking the Christianity out of it and being like, am I a good or a bad person? And because Remus is everything bad piled up, is like
literally the one side that is the most potently, like, this one can ruin Thomas if left unchecked.
Yes.
Is at least what he thinks at the time, of course. And I guess that's still technically true, because if you leaned into your intrusive thoughts in a real sense, that is something that could be quite dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see those, like, connections.
Yeah.
But,
I think that's a lot of context to kind of who Remus is. It's still kind of, I think it's just, for me, still kind of frustrating that we don't know exactly what his motivations are, but we'll get to that soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely just a product of him not being on screen enough.
Yeah, and that just makes me sad because I'm excited to see where he goes. Because honestly, as I think we might have mentioned this already, but in dealing with intrusive thoughts, he just has those moments where he gets really frustrated and angry, and then he switches it and he's just, like, coping with humor again, pretending everything's fine. And that happens a lot in any episode that Remus appears in. So it's going to
be interesting to learn more about him as we go. But next up, we're going to take a quick break from talking about Remus and then get back into it, because something that we forgot in our last side study episode, we forgot that we had a bit of a pattern of talking about what would happen if a side ducked out. And we didn't do that with Janice. And we have to do that with Remus in a bit. But first we need to get with Janice for that one. And I know we disagree on this to some extent.
We disagree on that.
And it's going to be interesting to see what people say in the comments, if people weigh in on this, because I feel like I'm right.
Well, here's the deal. I think we're not far off from each other again. Like, the Roman and Janice, I think we're really, really close to agreeing with each other. And then I think that's the same thing here. We just don't agree with exactly where those lines are.
I think in general that tends to be, like, us. Like, whenever we disagree about something, we're basically on the exact same page, except for one little thing that changes.
One little teeny tiny detail.
One little thing. It's like, the difference between our arguments is like a spot the difference. It's like they both look almost identical. It's like balloon there, tree there, but that guy has a fucking mustache and that one doesn't. I don't know where that string of words came from, but here we are.
That's great.
Thank you. I'm glad. I just sort of heard myself start speaking and I was like, yeah, go off, Tech Rail.
Literally the way that's happened to me so many times. All right.
Oh my gosh. But so yeah, what would happen if Janice were to duck out? Well, see, my thought is that if Janice, the Lord of the Lies, deceit Janice Sanders, were to duck out, then Thomas would have an inability to lie, which seems like a reasonable thing, because Janice is the center of the lies. What do you have to say on that, Amy? I want you guys to know that we had this debate literally before we recorded, and then also now. So like a couple hours ago we had this debate, and now we're about to have it again. So I'm like anticipating.
But that's the thing. We don't have to hang on it too long, because like it's not. I don't think we're too far off. Yeah. Personally, because having played Janice, my mindset is very focused on Janice being self-preservation and being that like motivation to protect yourself directly, just you. So my argument is the idea that if Janice ducked out, Thomas would not care about protecting himself, so he would be very others-oriented. And in being others-oriented, that lends way for people-pleasing. And people-pleasing in and of itself is manipulative. So, as we've talked about with Patton in the past. So, because of that, I believe that he still has a capacity for manipulation and for that kind of in the sense of trying to control other people around him, possibly. But at the same time, yes, the core of deception and lying and manipulation is gone. So he probably would just get walked over in every sense of the way. So honestly, I think having processed that more, I think I agree with you.
You're telling me after all this you agree with me?
I don't know.
After maybe. like a 15-minute long debate before the podcast, we get on the podcast and now you agree with me?
Maybe. I don't know. It all came out and then I was like, oh, actually.
Did it finally click into you that he's the center of lies and so him not being there would refrain him from lying?
Here's the deal. You're talking, okay, this is where we disagree. Because this is where we disagree, because you're saying he's the Lord of the Lies, and yes, he is the main core of lying, but manipulation doesn't have to necessarily involve it's not just about preserving yourself, it's also about preserving other people sometimes, and then there's other aspects of manipulation that aren't necessarily oriented towards your benefit.
Okay.
So with that being said, I wouldn't say that Janice only encompasses lying. He encompasses self-preservation and trying to protect yourself and your own image. So you've said to me that you think Janice is just about lies.
No. Take those words, put them back in your mouth. I didn't say that.
Okay. Explain it.
I agree with you that Janice is more than just lies, but I think that when it comes to lies, Janice is the center. I think it's not that he is...
So we're agreeing.
Yes. As usual, we are agreeing. except for the one thing. And the one thing is that you seem to think that because Janice is self-preservation in addition to lies, that means that lies used for a different purpose would still be able to be done without Janice. That's where we differ. Because I don't think that any other side would be able to get Thomas to lie without Janice being around. In the same way that no other side could snap Thomas back into his, feeling anxious about anything when Virgil ducked out. I feel like when you have the center of a concept in a side, if they duck out, all of that goes away. And I think there are ways around it. I know off the podcast I said that I think instead of Thomas just answering every question bluntly, honestly, I think there would be ways to sort of get around it. Like if someone were to give you a cupcake that tasted bad, and you can't lie, but you want to be able to spare their feelings, you could at the very least say, well, I appreciate that you made me a cupcake. I think that is the furthest he can go with omitting the truth, which is that he hated it. That's the thing. I think there are ways around it that you can still preserve, yourself in front of others in terms of, there are ways to get around, specifically just speaking only truths at every given moment. And, there's a way to hide certain things, but there's not a way to outwardly lie without Janice. That's my stance.
So you think, okay, so an example then. Yes. If a child, I hate to do this on the podcast, but we're going to do it.
It's the Remus episode.
Here's the deal. The child believes in Santa Claus. Okay. Honestly, actually, I just answered that for myself because I've heard multiple people, including, I got to give credit to Jessie, say that they would talk about how Santa is the feeling that you get when you give. So having that perspective. So maybe I just kind of talked myself out.
No, but that leads you into the issue of still telling them that Santa's not real. That's still confirming their concern of if he's real or not. I'm trying to think of a way you could spin it. You seem confused.
What do you mean?
I thought the point of that exercise was to avoid telling the child that Santa's not real.
Avoid?
Wait, what was the point of your example?
Okay. I don't know. Listen, chaos.
I thought we were trying to explain how you could lie without lying.
Well, I think what I'm saying is if you didn't have Janice and a child was coming up to you and saying that they believe in Santa, but without Janice, I think, I don't know.
I'd say I'm happy that you believe in Santa, and if that's what you believe, then write as many letters as you can, little Johnny.
But what if the kid goes, do you believe in Santa?
It's not important what I believe. What's important is what you believe, buddy. Adults have a harder time believing in Santa, for reasons that I cannot explain. But you're a child, and you believe in Santa, and therefore, you write as many letters as you want, you get that trike. I still believe it's
manipulative because I think anything you say there is manipulative because you're controlling how the kid views.
I'm not saying it's manipulative. I'm just saying it's not a lie. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying that without him you can't manipulate. I'm just saying you can't lie. It's like Jim Carrey liar rules. You cannot outwardly lie.
I don't agree with that. Well, I think we're still gonna have to agree to disagree because I think manipulation in and of itself, we do agree that he could still be manipulative without Janice.
I think so.
But where we differ is I don't think that line of whether he can be his manipulation possibility, I don't think it slices out lying completely. I don't think that's where we're going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, because I still very wholeheartedly believe that without... I meant to do that. Lies.
course.
Um,
Yeah.
I still wholeheartedly believe that without Janice, again, Lord of the Lies, that you couldn't
Lord
lie.
of the Lies.
But
Well,
we'll have to
we'll leave
tell us
that
what
to
you
the
guys think in the
comments.
comments. Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
both
yeah.
said the exact same thing at the exact same time and got muddled. But
It was beautiful.
it was
Did anyone
wonderful.
understand that?
Maybe. I think my voice
Maybe.
tends to override yours a little bit sometimes when I listen back to the recording, so I think that's part of it.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Hey, I'll tell you what. I didn't say Trump's. Whoops.
Well, we don't speak that name here. Anyway,
Cancel the podcast.
it's a podcast.
I feel like this is the most
I
we've
will
canceled in
say-
one episode.
we gotta give credit where credit's due. An interesting point that Jessie brought up, which I don't know who this Jessie is. That
Who
just
knows?
who's
It's
this
not
Jessie?
like this
I
Jessie
don't-
person's in the
it's not like
description of
they're
every
involved-
episode.
I know they're not involved in the podcast at all. But
Yeah, no, they've never been in every episode of the podcast.
every episode, shush, shush, shush. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that Jessie talked about how if Janice disappeared, Thomas wouldn't be very good at acting.
I do like that take. I think that makes sense because what is acting if not pretending, and what is pretending if not lying to some degree?
To a degree, like I mean, I go back and forth on that because like acting is manipulating your own emotions. You're honestly lying to yourself when you act.
And I mean, to
so
be fair,
maybe-
Janice, they've mentioned that Janice is part of Thomas lying to himself as well. So that makes sense.
Oh,
That would be a problem because what was it like the fact that like you believing yourself to be someone who doesn't lie and is a perfectly good person, and like someone
So
who would
honestly-
never do so is lying to yourself, and that's what Janice is partially encompassing as well.
that's interesting because like also with acting and psychology, it's really, really important to protect yourself
Yeah.
when you're acting because there's a lot of people, Heath Ledger is a really good example of people who don't protect themselves when they act or don't do enough to protect themselves, and it becomes like your brain starts to kind of believe whatever's actually happening, and you can't unlearn that.
Getting
So
lost in
I
the
almost think,
fantasy.
yeah, getting really lost in the fantasy. That's honestly something that happens. Or like, for example, if you're using like to cry, if you're trying to cry while you're acting and you consistently use like a really dark memory of yours, you're consistently pulling that out and that's not healthy.
No, not really.
Yeah. So I
Constantly
almost
like trigger
wonder-
yourself on stage.
Yeah. So I think either he's not good at acting or he can't protect himself as he's acting. So he would be more prone to damage because he's acting. Whoa.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it would take away the entirety of being able to act, but I do think it would massively impair his abilities.
Yeah. That's great. Jessie really made both of us go.
Yeah, no, we heard that and we were like, whoa.
I know, we both really went, whoa.
On to Remus. What would happen if I have a sort of sad take about what would happen if Remus were to duck out and not be there.
I haven't thought about this, so go
I
ahead.
thought about it for a couple seconds and then I was like, aw. My thought of what would happen, I mean, just based on what we know of Remus right now and what he's contributed so far, I think if Remus ducked out, everything would be fine. It's a really sad thought, but like, Remus doesn't really contribute so far that we know of. Obviously, we don't know fully his story yet, but as of currently, his two contributions are dark creativity, which is something that Thomas has suppressed for years anyways. So it's something that he's already pushed out and can, to some degree, live without. And two, intrusive thoughts, which more often exists to trigger Thomas. Like, I know he is a half of Thomas's creativity, but it is a half that he shuts out. So because of that, because that Remus is something that Thomas already is constantly trying to push away and has pushed away for years, there's a part of me that thinks that Thomas without Remus is just kind of Thomas. Like, I think he's the one side that would have the least impact if he were to duck out and not be around. That's my thought.
Fair, but Janice wouldn't have as much power.
How do you think?
Janice wouldn't be able to cause the chaos that causes Thomas to... Because the thing is, Janice is going in a certain direction, right?
Uh-huh.
So, like, Janice is trying to teach Thomas to take care of himself. Okay. I don't think Janice could get Thomas to that point without Remus.
No, I don't buy that. I only don't buy that because the reason Remus even works in the first place is because Virgil's responding to Remus. Patton and Virgil are responding to Remus. So they would just need to find a different stimulus. I mean, honestly, they were already making some sort of progress without Remus. Like, there was already, pushing Thomas to feel, like, to look at himself more. Obviously, Remus has been a big help, and I think is helping to aid it faster. But I don't think Remus is the end-all, be-all of Janice's progress in that goal. Because it's still based on the response of another side. It's still based on Thomas having anxiety over it. And that, I think, can be manufactured a lot easier. Because the thing is, Thomas doesn't lose much without Remus in terms of his personality. He would just be a cleaner-cut person. He wouldn't be as, naughty in that way.
But here's the deal, oh man, this is bordering on our theory, and I'm having to be
we can't dip into that.
I know, we have to be careful about what I say. I think the issue is, I don't know how, Wow, okay, I really should have thought about this before the podcast, sorry y'all. I was going to say,
what?
Well, I was sitting here going, I don't know how Janice could bring Roman and Virgil to such a breaking point to prove his point without Remus.
Well, I think it would just take longer, because it would just be other life experiences getting in the way. Because, I mean, think of SVS and putting others first. Those didn't have anything to do with Remus, and those were some bigger turning points of, getting a point across, right. Especially through Janice.
Okay, but the only reason that Roman really got triggered is because Janice said what he said about Remus.
No, but I'm talking about the core issues that were in Thomas's life at that time. I don't know what that's doing to Roman yet, but I'm saying in terms of Thomas learning about himself and experiencing these things, those were caused by events in Thomas's life and not relating to anything really with Remus outside of that one issue between Janice and Roman.
But that's where Janice is heading.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I still think Remus was a part of his plan, but I don't think, as much as he is beneficial, I don't know if he's crucial. I think he's crucial in it happening quicker, but I think without Remus having been there, I think he would just have to wait for more of Thomas's life events to pile up and more of those lessons to be learned and more of that anxiety to be had about what's happening. Because again, Remus is sort of the delivery system for more anxiety that's causing Thomas to get the point across. Getting the point to Thomas. Because he's not Virgil, and he's not what is being caused. He is not the reaction. He is what is causing the reaction. That's the way to put it. Remus is not the reaction that is getting Thomas to a point. He is what is causing a reaction. But there are other things that have caused that reaction before and probably will cause that reaction, further. So I still think there's a path that Janice would be able to take if Remus wasn't around.
I don't think it'd be as easy or possible.
This again might have to be something we agree to disagree. Because man, we're getting a lot.
I want to talk to you about something specific, but we can't.
Write it down. We'll talk about it after the podcast.
I know we'll have to talk about it after the podcast, and then after the episode's out, we can explain because I really want to do that.
Yeah.
But,
write it down right now while I say this last point.
Okay.
No, don't write it where I can see it. I'll only think about it. I saw you in the notes, and I was like, don't you dare. It'll be all I can think about, and I'll read it out loud. Zoinks, man. Oh, my Lord.
Sorry, folks.
I got so scared. I was going to say for those who can't see, nobody can see this. But I have we have, or at least I know I have my notes open constantly when this podcast goes on, and I saw like the little line of Amy's text just show up on the screen, and I was like, Amy's gonna put it there exactly where I can see it. No. Dear Lord, don't do
you
that.
guys hear the behind the scenes.
Anyways, just one silly closing thought as to what would happen if Remus ducked out. I think Thomas would be asexual. And you know what? I'm pretty okay with that. Because, I mean, if Remus is the center of a lot of those kinky vibes, I think that's where... In the same way that Roman is where his romance lies, I think Remus is where his sexuality lies. And I think in that way, he would be ace. He'd be an ace boy. So, listen, Remus, I love you, but get out of here. I need my representation.
Well, you say specific... I hate to take it away from you, but I'm also, like, thinking about how Roman... I mean, they're all gay, and that is his sexuality.
No. Well, wait, hold on. What are you saying? I'm a little confused as to your point.
When you say I'm gay, that is your sexuality.
Well,
or your bi.
I mean, that's also like what the difference between like asexual and aromantic. You can not want the sex bit, but you can want the relationship bit. So even without the sex bit, he would still be gay. He would still have a preference in that way. I'm talking about the specific physical relationship there.
That's also fair.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you that. All right.
Asexuals win.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we should do...
Get out of here, Remus. Sorry, I'm reveling in the ace vibes.
No, you're valid. I think we're going to have to come back to that point, though, because I don't want to concede that Remus... Because I think it almost seems like either there's more to Remus than we know, or there's something... Because I just don't agree. I don't think it's possible for a side to disappear completely and nothing to happen. I just don't like the sound of that.
Well, okay, it's not that nothing would happen. It just would have a very minimal effect compared to other
But
sides.
I don't like that. Because there's really important value to every side. And Logan was trying to tell Remus that. So there's something we're missing there.
I agree with you. I think that we're missing something, and that's why I prefaced that when I started saying that, because I'm only building off of what we know now. I'm sure there is some deeper meaning to what Remus is. But also, even then, I will also just one last time quantify that he is half of creativity, so he in itself doesn't even need to be his own separate thing further outside of that. What we see might be already what he is. And in that way, it's just lopping off a bit of the creativity that's already suppressed. So that's why I think there's a lesser effect compared to a whole other side.
That's also fair, because he repressed Remus so hard.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, he repressed him for years. He already lived without him for so long.
Wow.
I don't know.
All right, well... Are you ready for a Mind Palace moment, Tegru?
Yeah. I don't know what that enthusiasm was. That was like a smosh pit. Oh my god. Let's do it.
I fixed it. Yeah. Physical fitness with Remus and a working gazelle. Woo. I'm already out of breath. Anyway, I stole Pat and skip it. So I'm gonna skip it. Am I in the shot? Can you see me? I don't actually, nobody was willing to help me film this. So you're gonna help me. Can you see this? Well, if you're on Spotify, you can't see nothing. You can't, that's the police. Act casual. Act nonchalant. We're fine. We're just doing physical fitness. And that's fine. So.
Fuck you. And that was a moment.
Tense one at that, apparently. So, who do you think called the cops on Remus? I'm placing bets on Roman. Maybe Patton.
I think the only one that would actually take the time to take their phone out and call the cops would either be Virgil or Logan. But I don't even know if Logan has his phone on him all the time.
I like to think that Patton tattled on Remus, and then went to Logan, and Logan was like, "Oh, he stole your kazoo." Theft is bad. Boop boop boop. Police.
Yeah. Hi, police.
Hello, are you the police? I need one police, please. What?
You all know how much I love Mr. Epic Man and the Men Who Do Nothing.
Oh.
That's literally, they pick up their little plastic phone and they go, "Hi, police." And it's my favorite thing in the world.
I just want to call the cops and be like, "I would like one police, please."
One singular
Can I
police.
have maybe 1 or 2 polices?
And a cheese pizza at that.
By the way, police, you're my favorite pizza place.
You're my favorite pizza. How many references can we make in like 30 seconds?
Too many.
The best.
Too many.
Oh my god.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love them. Anyway.
So let's talk about the episodes, the many, many, incredibly many episodes that Remus has been in. 3.
I think that was the best introduction you could have.
I'm very happy it worked out that way.
That was great.
And apparently my chair likes it too with all the noise. Isn't that right, Duke? I like that my chair has a name now.
Doof?
I've never been able... What?
I like saying the word doof.
Oh, okay. I thought you
Yeah.
were confused as to the name of my chair, and I was like, no, Duke, we were talking about Remus.
No, I'm just calling you a doof.
Oh, okay, well, valid. I am one.
Me too. We match. Anyway.
Anyways,
So,
I like how I have a name for my chair, though. I like how I've never been able to name, like, a computer or like, I have a ukulele, and I've never been able to name it. Like, people give names to things, but my chair is now the Duke.
mm-hmm.
My chair is now
Understood.
Remus.
Well,
Moving on from that one.
Moving on, that's
we're going to
bad.
talk about the
So
episodes that
bad.
Remus has been in.
I know. I love that you have a name for your chair.
It's great.
And I want to say Dealing with Intrusive Thoughts was the episode that I was addicted to the most. I call Dealing with Intrusive Thoughts kind of the Frozen or the Let It Go, I guess, of my Sandersides experience, because I watched the fuck out of that episode, and I pretty much have that entire damn thing memorized.
No, honestly. It's
So
crazy.
I love it. It's so good. And we basically talked about it a lot
Yeah,
here.
probably most of the
about what
points
we-
that there were, honestly.
Honestly, that's what the entire episode was about.
It was about
But,
introducing Remus, really.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think the main points that we can reiterate bringing up are the fact that Remus, Virgil and Patton were afraid of Remus, so they were kind of trying to get him to repress back into his hole or whatever.
press it back into his hole?
Shush, shush, shush. I'm letting it sit because it's Remus. Then the fact that like Logan puts him in his place and he gets frustrated about it, and you can visibly see he's frustrated, but then he hides it with humor.
Yeah, he's a
And he
little
doesn't
coke
take
boy.
things- He's kind of like Patton in the fact that he's repressing his own shit.
Also, unfortunate thought. I mean, unfortunate in the way that Roman wouldn't want this connection. That's what Roman does, too. It's almost like they're sort of two halves of a whole. A hole.
Wow.
The one he
That's-
repressed into. Sorry. Remus is out.
Listen, I would expect nothing less from the Remus episode.
Oh, yeah. You
Um,
know I would make that joke in any episode, really.
Honestly. But I think it's just, it's interesting that like Remus really just puts on a face and is like, oh, it's just like old times. Like, everything's fine, when he just got like pummeled by Logan.
Or like the
Literally.
moment where he's talking about, what was it, like the thoughts that Dahmer had, Jeffrey Dahmer, and he's like getting all kind of like serious and sad about like how Dahmer repressed those thoughts and pushed them away and shunned them, and then immediately after that description he's like, yeah, didn't do him much good.
Yeah, I think that's what's weird about Remus to me, that I feel uncomfortable or like being improvising as him, is I don't know why he has such a quick turnaround. I mean, part of it honestly is probably because he's been doing it all his life.
Fair.
But at the same time, it's so foreign to me right now that I'm still kind of like, I don't think I can understand it until I see him broken down a little bit.
Yeah, because it's really hard, I think, to figure out where the line is between what makes Remus actually uncomfortable and what's just a bit, or what he enjoys. And I think we'll talk about that also, especially in the third example of the episodes. But it's hard to tell what he is okay with and what actually pleases him or displeases him, because it feels like even the stuff that usually displeases him, there can sometimes be an angle of him still enjoying it to some extent. So it's like, what is this character not okay, not like? What is he not okay with?
He hides it so well. Like, he's hiding a lot. Yeah. And I can't tell what he's hiding and where's the honesty. I don't know where the honesty is. That's honestly the big thing about him. Mm-hmm. So working through intrusive thoughts is the next time he appears.
God, second of 3. And that's the one where he just straight up targets poor Logan.
He just targets Logan, which is interesting. I don't know if y'all know this detail. I love this detail. The fact that his eyeshadow color changes based on who he's targeting.
Does it?
I know you didn't know that. It does. So, like, it's purple in dealing with intrusive thoughts because he's targeting Virgil. And in working through intrusive thoughts, it's blue because he's targeting Logan. I didn't know you didn't know that. I'm so glad I got your reaction on camera.
Either you told me that before. If anyone told me that, it must have been you, I think. And either I found that out at some point and completely forgot, or I never once heard that before.
I think
that's fascinating.
It wasn't. I didn't directly discover that. I don't think. I don't remember who told me that.
I
wish I could give them. You can look at it.
But like, is it confirmed, or is it like a coincidence type of thing?
I don't think it's a coincidence.
That's fascinating.
I don't think it's been confirmed, but I doubt it's a coincidence. I almost wonder if I heard it on a Patreon live stream or something, because I was in the Patreon live stream for working through intrusive thoughts, the writer's room.
Oh.
I was in there, so it might have been said in there.
That's a fascinating thought.
Maybe. I don't remember
we'll get that confirmation at some point, I'm sure. Like, if he... Well, that's the thing. How far would that go? Because, like, depending on who he would, like, actually be targeting, it depends on how well, like, that type of color eyeshadow would work in different applications. Because blue and purple, I think, are standard. It's like, when it gets into the other colors, it's like, how well would those work with Remus's palette?
Maybe Thomas is making the change subtle, so that when it does become really obvious, it's like a whoa moment.
Interesting. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really cool. It's really cool. Because honestly, it kind of plays into the whole, like, Virgil's eyeshadow's purple. Like, it kind of, I think that's kind of where it was inspired from.
Changes based on context.
Yeah.
And I guess it would make sense that there would be a visual indication of, like, who the intrusive thoughts is targeting to some extent. Because that's, like, he is sort of bred to affect others. He's bred to get a reaction out of certain people. And so, like, there being a visual indication of who he's going at actually does kind of line up there.
It's fascinating. It's very cool. Thomas's details, guys, the details in Sanders Sides, you just need to open your eyes and look a little closer. I promise you'll catch something you didn't catch before. It's so cool.
Just open your eyes and look at their eyes, because that's usually
open
where the details are.
Look at their eyes. Yeah.
Open your eyes so you can look at theirs. Hello.
Anyway, let's see.
He talks a lot about Nico in that episode, Remus, or he's getting on Thomas about Nico. Which is interesting.
And I think...
Well, I mean, which makes sense, though.
I honestly want to say that Remus pulls more... Virgil has...
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm like literally yelling at my chair in the middle of your point. It's gotten, the more I talk about it in episodes, the more I'm like so willing to just look at my chair when that happens and be like, shut the fuck up. Continue.
I mean, we personify aspects of a personality. Honestly, it's okay to personify a chair. Mm-hmm.
That's my version of Sanders Sides. Just all the chairs in my house and the different properties they have.
It wouldn't surprise me. So honestly, I'm wondering if Virgil has an anxious thought and then Remus runs with it.
I would say that makes sense, because especially given this point in the story where Nico as a thought is already running through Thomas's mind, I don't even think it needs to be Virgil specifically as much as it just needs to be something that's on the top of Thomas's brain.
Oof. Comes from Patton.
I mean, I think it just comes from anyone. I just think it comes from whatever is the biggest subject on Thomas's brain.
The big subject. If it's really overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm sure Virgil doesn't help because he's very anxious about this new relationship. But it makes sense that he's going to draw a lot of the ammunition from whatever is big on Thomas's brain because that's what he's thinking about already. And usually, I think, I know for me at least, intrusive thoughts tend to stem from what I'm focusing on at the moment, and then my brain will sometimes take that and be like, what about this? And I'm like, no! So it's like, usually it can branch off in that way, so I think it does make sense that in this point of the story, it would be a lot about Nico.
Mm-hmm. And also the idea of, like, being alone.
Yeah. Which, someone, I think especially someone who spends a lot of their time in their living room talking to themselves, I think that's a pretty big concern. And I speak as that of, as a maladaptive daydreamer who does quite the same. So, like, this is not a judgment, this is a relation.
No, that's so fair. I was gonna also kind of bring attention to the fact that Remus is intentionally trying to keep Thomas from being productive.
That is interesting.
And I think that's Janice's doing to an extent. I think Janice is kind of pushing that somehow.
You think so? Like, sort of like, there are bigger things to focus on than, like, your daily tasks. Like, you need to be focusing on, like, what's eating you.
Trying to... I don't know. I don't know if Janice is... See, this is where I want to know what Janice is thinking in deep context. Because, like... It honestly depends on what Janice is telling Remus. Is Remus, like, intellectually understanding what Janice wants and doing that? Or is Remus just kind of doing whatever he thinks is best?
I think Janice, when going into this plan, basically opened Pandora's box. And I think that shows a lot in the way that Janice interacts with Remus, is that, like, he is himself put off by Remus quite a bit in a lot of scenes. So I think he doesn't have as much control of Remus. I think he just knew that letting Remus out would affect Thomas in the way that he needed to push forward, his goals and getting Thomas to see, himself. So I don't think it's almost like very like Cat in the Hat, like thing one, thing two. It's like they're going to do whatever they do, but just letting them out and letting them run amok is what's getting the point across. I'm not telling them what to do. They're just going to do what they do. A-Skoodely-Boo.
So you think Remus is just acting out with what he wants?
Yeah.
And because there's a direction right now, he's kind of using that.
Yeah, I think so. I think Remus is just
Honestly,
Remus just takes from whatever Thomas is thinking. I think Janice is not influencing Remus's specific actions. Janice is just like, hey, I found a wild Remus. You need to look at this. Have fun. And I think from that point on, like from like the conversation we saw in Remus's song, I think from that point on, he was like, okay, go get him, Remus. Have fun. And then from that point, he didn't instruct him. And now Remus is just here. And I think it's just his existence that's getting Thomas to the point that Janice needs him to get to. Because I can't see Remus as one who takes very strong direction. He's an agent of chaos, quite honestly.
Yeah. So, yes, I think he's an agent of chaos. It's interesting, though. It does seem he has a direction.
Does he?
Or he has a pent-up frustration that Janice is egging on. So there's a reason that he's targeting people.
I suppose.
Because, well, that's the thing. It's interesting that whole first episode, they were talking about how Remus doesn't have a rhyme or a reason.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was really going for Virgil's throat a little bit in that first one. And then in this one, he's directly trying to get Logan to do something because the Orange Eyes moment happened.
I mean, honestly, it's funny because I'm about to contradict my whole point. But
I know, because this whoa.
Yeah, no, that's not even new with me, but, like, it's definitely one of those moments where I'm like, damn it, I'm about to prove myself a little wrong. But
I know, but that's
I do that in
not the
therapy
podcast.
lots. It's my favorite. It's my favorite where I'm just like, well, damn it, now I'm about to say something that proves me wrong in front of my therapist, and I'm like, well, great, now I'm about to do your work for you, and now we're about to agree on something, and you're gonna look at me like, oh, yeah, and I'm gonna be like, damn it.
I'll play your therapist.
That's not the direction I thought we were going today. My therapist is that intense. No,
Yeah, I'm writing really
just writing
intense.
smoke's
Okay,
coming
go
off the
ahead.
paper. No,
Go ahead.
it is interesting that Remus did lead through that episode to piss off Logan to the point where that whole orange eye moment had happened, and then Remus immediately was like, interesting, and then dipped. That felt very intentional in retrospect.
Okay, so that honestly begs the question, is there rhyme or reason to what Remus does?
I don't know.
I think it's chaos.
See,
but
it's
I
hard to
think
see
it's
if that was
intentional.
rhyme and reason or if that was just him being happy that his annoyance worked. And he just was like, okay, that's done. I'm good for now. I broke you. It's really
There's
hard
a
to
debate.
tell.
There's a debate because I think Janice pointed him a certain direction.
That's fair. I'm
I
not,
think Janice would go that way.
I'm not confident in one way or the other at this point to be able to say like a full debate on this. So, but like, I think it's really one of those things that we're gonna need more information. But I do think it could go either way. I think there's just as equal a chance as he's an agent of chaos as there is of him being very intentional and led. I just don't know.
I think we don't have to linger on this long because I think this is bordering on theory because like we just don't know enough about Remus right now. But like also, I think the fact I'm going to stand in the park that was intentional.
Okay.
And that Remus was sitting there being like, doing the, like, because the thing is, the way that he had a book for dummies with Logan's face on it, and also like
Was
the way he
Logan's
literally
face on it?
Oh yeah, it
I
had
don't
Logan's face
remember
on it.
that. That's great.
Oh yeah. And then like the moment where he literally goes,
Uh-huh.
and just like is intentionally like not listening, but also I think it's intentional in the way of like, I don't think he's choosing what he does directly. I think he's choosing the direction he's going.
That's fair.
So
Like, I think he's clever enough to have
because-
those intentional actions. I just don't know if he has a goal behind it. But I also am not confident
think
enough
he's-
to say he doesn't or does.
I don't think his goals align with Janice.
That's fair.
I think his goal in working through intrusive thoughts was literally just to piss Logan off.
I think his
And to get
goal is
back-
usually to piss off the easiest target in the room.
Whereas Janice seemed like he had some other goal, which is where that orange eye moment came from, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Wow.
We'll have
All
to
right.
move on from that because I really do not know one way or
We
the
gotta
other.
keep moving.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Man,
Wow,
from one
interesting.
debate to another, because we have a big one coming up with Have I Grown? 5 years later, the Sander Side's 5-year special. I don't know why that... Something about the way I said that sounded so, like, sarcasm-y. I meant that so sincerely. I think I'm just tired at this point. We're recording this kind of late.
I know. We're recording late.
This is, I think, the latest we've ever recorded a podcast. It is 11:30
We're
currently.
gonna keep moving.
Oh my god. Well, we're getting there. So...
Yeah, we are.
we have I Grown? And this is a very interesting episode for Remus because there's potential alluding to something for him because there's a plot point that shows up once in this episode. Sorry, my brain is not coming up with words all of a sudden. There's a plot point that comes up in this episode where Janice, I believe it's Janice, sprays Remus at some point when he's about to talk too much about the upcoming events in future, episodes and future Time with Thomas, where Janice sprays him with what the bottle says is anti-spoiler spray, which is just soap, soapy water, I think. Later in that episode, in that special, Thomas asked the question of if any of the sides have regrets, and Remus, at that point when they cut to him, just sort of says regrets. while like basically chugging the anti-spoiler like spray. And the question is, does that mean he has regrets, or does that mean he does not have regrets? And I know me and Amy have some disagreements on this. Would you like to go first?
I don't even know if it's disagreements or if it's just the fact that I don't know. Because my personal perspective is it lines up that he could have regrets, but because of how chaotic he is, I just don't understand where they're coming from. But I think that's something that'll get it. I have a feeling that is foreshadowing in some way, but I don't necessarily think it has to be regrets specifically, because it could just be played off as a really chaotic moment where he's, drinking the thing that hurts him because he's being kinky and he likes things that hurt him. And I mean, as somebody who's experienced an allergic reaction very similar to how Remus was reacting, you don't want that. But then again, if you're enjoying getting stabbed in the chest in other instances, then maybe you just enjoy hurting yourself. I don't know what's going on, but that could also be, I don't know.
It's interesting because, again, it's that question of what does Remus like and not like. But I think it is interesting to be said that at the moment where they're talking about regrets, not only does he not answer the question quite, because he doesn't say no. And I think it would have been really easy for him to say no amidst him doing that. But not only is he not saying no, but he's also chugging a bottle that is labeled anti-spoiler spray. And whether or not he's enjoying that, it's a plot point that was set up specifically as a thing to prevent Remus from spoiling something. And I think that whether or not he's doing it because he likes it or not, it's still a reference to no spoilers in this scene, mixed with Remus saying, with him not answering whether or not he has regrets, directly at least.
Right. I think I'm honestly gonna because that really does, like, I hear your perspective and I see it. I think I'm biased. Now, the more I think about it, I really do think that I'm just sitting here realizing that I've had a reaction similar to that. Like, I just said that, but like the fact that I've had a reaction similar to that, I know how hard it is to think when you're experiencing that. So maybe this is just me trying to be like, bruh, you can't do anything when you're having a reaction like that. Like, my face was that red. The amount of people that I know that have had allergic reactions like that are looking at the makeup there and are just like, is that real? It looks so good. Oh my God. But also, I think that might be part of the reason why I'm hesitant to believe that, because I just sympathize too damn hard. I think that might be it.
I don't know. But it brings the question of, would Remus have regrets? And, based on his character right now, it's really hard to say. I think there's argument to be made, because there is a line, I don't know if we mentioned in this episode yet, but there is a line where, like, when he's being, like, judged into it, where he says, you made me this way. He's looking at Thomas and being like, you made me this way.
Blame.
And there's, huh?
Blame.
But also, Thomas. It's the question of, like, that line is interesting. He's talking about, like, being, the unloved brother, and you made me this way. And it's the question of, like, maybe he does what he does, and there's, whether or not there's rhyme or reason, and maybe it's something that's just sort of instinctual with him, but maybe there's regret in the idea that he cannot help himself. He physically cannot, because he was made this way. He's literally a split side that has no control over that action. And therefore, even if he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing, he might just sort of have to, because this is the life he had been given.
But that's a really interesting thing for psychology, because then the amount of people that believe that about themselves, that they're stuck in their ways forever because that's how they've always known it. You just unlocked something, Tegriel.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thought, because if he was born in being shunned away and repressed, and if he was born forced into this role of being the, negative things that Thomas doesn't want to hear, he has no control of that. He has no control of what, became of him. And therefore, he doesn't really have much control over his actions. So maybe he can regret while also not regretting. There's that part of him that, it's almost like it's very like psychopath thinking. It's like, I need to be doing what I'm doing, but also like I can understand why it's bad, but also, yeah, it's like it's what needs to be done. I can't not do it. It's just a part of me.
Tech real.
Yes. Yes.
That was awesome.
Thank you. I'm pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. I'm fascinated by that. Whoa.
So,
I think we can. Wow. I think we can leave that there because honestly, we don't know what direction they're going. But I think you're on to something. I think that's awesome.
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
Big. You are not. You are not.
No.
This is why you're here.
Because I'm not a hat rack. The bar was that low. Anyways. There was a hat rack that auditioned. I only just barely made it. As if there was an audition process for this podcast.
I like hats, man. Anyway.
There could have been a hat every episode. But no, your brain has to do thinking and not be a hat rack. You said in the auditions you weren't a hat rack, and that's where you lost me a little bit.
Well.
I'm sorry, I'm not a rack for hats.
Well, we better wrap this episode up. We better...
So
how...
we were both about to say the same thing.
We'll just say it together at the same time.
How?
Chaotically. How has... Wait, so I just realized that Discord's going to mess us up. Never mind.
It's okay. No, we got this. We got this.
Oh,
3,
God.
2, 1. How has this character impacted/reflected in our lives? It's going to be interesting to hear how much of that was actually be able to be heard from your side. Because, again, my voice kind of overrides a bit, I think. Well, anyways.
How is this character... Gabriel, answer that question. How...
Well, very much like Remus, I, too, eat deodorant. Not quite into the pickled poo-log myself. I'm more into cinnamon ashes. But...
I'm rethinking the hat rack. I'm kidding.
I just came up with such an epiphany with Remus, and you're gonna replace me with a rack for hats.
You eat deodorant?
That affects you? It's none of your business how good my insides smell.
That's a fair point, and I will back.
I could be eating chairs for all you care about. Sorry, Remus. Sorry, newly named Duke. I'm not eating you. I promise. That joke came full circle purely accidentally.
That was really good. That was really well done.
I'm very happy when I can bring a joke all the way around from the beginning to the end.
Oh my god.
Anyways, how Remus has impacted our lives. I mentioned this, I think in episode 1, but, Remus's existence in this series and, the inclusion of him is how I realized and validated my own intrusive thoughts and, the thoughts that I've had and how I learned to not attribute those to me being some gross, horrible person, but more so that, everyone has gross thoughts sometimes. Some more than others, unfortunately, accidentally. But I do not stand by those thoughts. I do not want those thoughts, and therefore, it's okay to, for those thoughts to come and go. I don't know if there's anything really past that for me specifically. I don't have as much a connection to Remus as I do with other sides for many reasons. I mean, I was gonna say I'm like a squeaky clean boy. I'm really not. But I watch a lot of things. But I mean, I guess in that way, Remus, has that interest in that secondary world. As someone who also who does try to come off somewhat clean in life, it is interesting to see that character who is just the complete opposite and gets to just sort of unloose. That's not it. Unleash.
Yes.
Unleash some of those inner fun little dark thoughts, not as violent, but more in darker media. Because that's the funny thing about me is that the juxtaposition between the things I like, and I always love thinking about that, is that I love Blue's Clues. I also like Netflix's You, which is a show about a serial killer. My Little Pony is my goddamn jam. Also, one of my favorite bands is Ninja Sex Party, so it's just fun seeing those juxtapositions. It's nice to have like a character that's just sort of like those inner like funkier parts.
There isn't much, I mean, there is to an extent, but there's not much representation in that direction.
Of what,
for
like
character
darker creativity or intrusive thoughts, or both?
Both.
I mean, yeah, honestly. I mean, it's a more abstract type of concept. I think the most representation it gets is just like sleazier characters in media. But even then, like, that's less of a representation of those thoughts. I mean, I guess that's sort of a representation of those thoughts. It's like the character that is like just kind of the worst. And you can just sort of like enjoy that character as a character, even though you know you wouldn't want to be them necessarily or as much want them in your life.
But they're like a whole-fledged person.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Comparing a side to anyone is going to be difficult in that way. But, yeah, no, there isn't a lot of characters like that, except for, like, those sleazier ones. Which, even then, I can't think of a lot of examples, at least off the top of my head.
Sleazier characters.
Sleazier. Glenn Quagmire. First one I thought of.
I don't know who that is.
The Family Guy? Quagmire?
I haven't seen him yet. I haven't seen that one. All I know is
you haven't seen the one with Quagmire? I'll give you a hint. That's most episodes that have ever existed.
No, I'm Family Guy in general. I haven't seen
okay.
Family Guy.
That makes sense. Okay. I was like, if you've seen Family Guy, 9 times out of 10, more likely than not, you've seen Quagmire at some capacity.
No, I haven't watched it enough. I need to, because I know it's really funny. It's cracked me up for a few of the
earlier Family Guy, personally.
Oh.
Earlier to middle Family Guy, recent Family Guy is not personally my cup of tea or most people's cup of tea. But
I need to.
There was an era of Family Guy that was just like perfect. Anyways, so that's me. How has Remus impacted your life?
In a similar way, I think it kind of voiced what those intrusive thoughts for me. I think they're a little different for me because they're connected to nightmares, but like, I don't know if that's the same thing, but like, it was something I related to when I saw it. Yeah, to an extent. I know there are times where like, I will not, like if I wake up from a nightmare, I don't fall asleep right away because I'm going to go right back into it.
I just want to say real quick, I just had a moment where, quick moment where I just made a connection with DeWitt that I completely never thought once before. And I can't believe I haven't thought once about this, because every time I've talked about dreams to people, I usually bring this up. I never realized that, like, so in the episode, Thomas's intrusive thought that comes up in the nightmare is him, like, what was it, like him killing his brother?
Yeah.
Not to the same extent, but I've had a dream of, like, a family member in my vicinity getting killed. And I just remember I was like, whoa, that is like a very similar kind of aspect. Obviously not the exact same, but I just made that connection when we were talking about dreams. I was like, whoa. That's
Character crazy. Thomas, can you say what?
Oh my god, Character Thomas, tell me.
Wow.
Continue your words, because mine stopped. I couldn't do it. Character Thomas Kinney.
So, I have a bit of a connection to intrusive thoughts in general, but I think this, once Remus came out and I, became obsessed with that one episode really intensely, I was slowly starting to accept the darker parts of myself anyway, because I've talked a lot about how Virgil has really impacted me. So I think in the same way, Remus was just kind of a vessel for learning to let thoughts sit if I don't think they're necessary to my growth. So in a backwards way, it really did help me accept Virgil that way. So an example, let me think. One of the things that if you know me at all, I talk about Virgil a lot in my day-to-day life because I just talk about how I have an anxiety disorder and like that's just something that happens and Virgil's loud in my head. But one of the things that I have mentioned frequently is that when Virgil is being very loud and I can feel he's trying to affect my mood, but he doesn't have to because what he's yelling about isn't something that I really have much stake in anymore, like, or whatever. I've worked through the issue or whatever and it's like over and Virgil's still having a fit. I tell him to go sit in the corner and just exist and scream like the kid, like kind of like Remus was doing with the child on the plane reference that Logan made. Like, you just kind of got to let him sit there and scream. I reference the fact that I make Virgil go sit in the corner, and I just, as I'm interacting with people or whatever I'm doing in the day, I can still hear, I guess, those thoughts are still there and they're still very loud, but I just kind of let them sit. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, you're annoying, be there, whatever, and then just sit there. And I think that concept, because I know I do that maladaptively in the way that we've talked about maladaptive daydreaming. I know I do that. But like at the same time, I don't think I would have gotten the concept to do that specifically with Virgil if it weren't for Remus.
Interesting. So basically just the concept of that not all thoughts are worth delving into. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Even after, I mean, sometimes it's just the fact that like I've already delved into them. Mm-hmm. I don't need to acknowledge it again because sometimes it's just Virgil trying to make me feel guilty about something. Yeah. Like, for example, if I say no to somebody going to some event, or like they can't use my car or whatever, like I say no to that. And then Virgil makes me feel guilty for not allowing that and being nice. Oh God, they hate me. Oh God, whatever. I know that those thoughts aren't true, so I can put him in the corner and be like, you can sit over there and have your fit. I know that's not true. Fuck off.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that until we started talking about this episode, but that's kind of cool.
That like the relationship with Remus in that way benefited the relationship with another side in your brain. I really like that. It's such a juxtaposition. But it also just makes very, like, thematic sense as to why that, like, connection would happen.
I think Remus and Virgil, as I say, I think they have a lot in common, and I'm interested to see where that opens up in time, because honestly, that might be why Remus was like, oh, it's just like old times, because they probably, like, connected in some way, maybe?
I'm sure. I mean, it seems like, again, the dark sides just have this history with Virgil.
I don't know what's going on there, but I want to know.
No.
We're gonna be patient, but like I want to know.
Of course.
But also,
we need to know right now, but also whenever Thomas is ready.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Correct. That is the perspective.
That makes exact sense in my mind, even though I know it's complete oxymoron.
No, I totally understand that. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, Remus. Dude, that was way more than we expected to talk about Remus.
I'm sorry?
That was way more than we expected to talk about Remus.
Honestly, we were worried we wouldn't have enough gas for this episode, and we literally came up with some interesting little epiphanies.
Remus provided a lot of gas.
I was really hoping you'd bring it back to that, because I didn't know how to spin that around. I said gas, and I was like, oh, there is opportunity here. Oh my gosh. But also, this was the last of our like specific side studies episodes for right now.
What are we going to do next week?
I don't know. Next week, I do know, actually. That's interesting. Wow, that really ruined my whole, I don't know. I actually know specifically what we're doing next week, which is a Q&A.
Oh my God, another Q&A.
Oh my God, our every couple episodes Q&A. So throw some questions in the comments of either here or the Q&A post that will come out on the various Side-ology social medias. But after that, who knows what will come? I don't know. Maybe things.
Maybe we have plans.
Oh, wow. Plans? Us?
No.
Yeah, no.
Us? Never.
Us? Nah.
Nah.
Definitely, though. But anyways.
On that note, have a good week, folks. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye, y'all. We love you.
Bye.